In the quiet town of Rosehill, mornings were usually slow, stretching gently across the rooftops like a soft blanket. But for 14-year-old Mira Dawson, mornings had always felt different, faster, louder, heavier, because every sunrise meant she had to prepare herself for another day of being invisible. People didn't ignore her out of cruelty. They simply thought she had nothing worth noticing. She was the quiet girl in the back of every classroom, the one who held doors open but was never thanked, the one who helped others with homework but was forgotten when group projects were formed. And even though Mira pretended it didn't matter, something deep inside her wished, just once, that someone would look at her and truly see her. Mira lived with her grandmother, a gentle old woman with silver hair and warm eyes that always seemed to hold secrets. Grandma Iris often told her, being unseen doesn't mean you're unimportant. Some hearts shine quietly, but they shine the brightest. Mira wanted to believe that. She really did. But when you spend years blending into the background like a shadow, it becomes hard to imagine anyone ever noticing your light. Her only real comfort was the library down the street, a small, dusty place filled with forgotten books and forgotten stories, a place where being quiet wasn't a flaw but a gift. She spent hours there every day, reading, dreaming, and wishing for something extraordinary to happen. One day, while organizing old shelves, Mira discovered a strange leather-bound book tucked behind a row of encyclopedias. It had no title, no author's name, just a symbol on the cover. A glowing silver circle with tiny lines spreading from it like rays of light. The moment she touched it, the air around her changed. It felt warmer, softer, almost alive. A gentle humming noise pulsed from the pages as if the book had been waiting for her, calling out to her silently for years. Mira blinked in confusion, unsure whether she should open it or put it back. But something about the book felt familiar. And so, with a deep breath, she opened it. Inside, the pages were blank, completely empty except for the first line written in shimmering ink. Those who feel unseen carry the power to see what others cannot. Mira's heart raced. She read the line again and again, trying to make sense of it. But as she turned to the next page, the ink began forming new words right before her eyes, swirling like tiny stars gathering into constellations. The book described a hidden force that existed in Rosehill, a force that only someone with a quiet, observant heart could awaken. It spoke of shadows that whispered, of lights that waited, and of a danger growing underneath the town's peaceful surface. And all of it somehow revolved around her. Suddenly, the floor beneath her trembled. The lights flickered. From the hallway outside the library room came a sound, soft at first, then louder, like something crawling or slithering where nothing alive should be. Mira froze. The book glowed brighter, casting a silver light around her. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't her imagination. Something was happening. Something real. Something dangerous. Taking a shaky breath, she closed the book and hugged it tightly to her chest, unsure what awaited her outside the library door. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life was no longer ordinary. The silence she had lived in for years had finally broken. And whatever was coming, she could no longer remain invisible. Mira stepped into the hallway, her fingers gripping the mysterious book so tightly her knuckles turned pale. The library was usually filled with quiet footsteps and soft whispers, but right now, it felt like the whole building was holding its breath. The sound she had heard, a soft scraping, almost like claws brushing against tile, echoed faintly, then vanished. Mira listened carefully, her heart thundering like a drum inside her chest. She wasn't brave. She had never been brave. But something inside her whispered that turning back wasn't an option anymore. The hallway was lined with tall windows, the afternoon sun pouring in through the dusty glass. Everything looked normal, almost peaceful, which only made the eerie silence feel heavier. Taking a slow step forward, Mira glanced around for the librarian, Mrs. Hillstone, but she was nowhere in sight. Usually, the woman hovered around like a friendly ghost, organizing books or humming old songs. Where was she? Mira swallowed nervously. Maybe she had just imagined the sound. Maybe stress or curiosity had gotten the better of her, but then she noticed something strange. A thin trail of ash-like dust stretched across the floor, leading toward the back exit of the library. Mira crouched beside it, running her fingers lightly through the particles. They shimmered not like normal dust, but like tiny pieces of crushed stars. Her breath caught. She gently brought her fingers closer to her face, watching the silver specks sparkle against her skin. Nothing in Rose Hill, not in the entire world she knew, looked like this. Suddenly, the book in her hands warmed again, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Mira opened it. New words had formed on the second blank page. Light leaves a trace when darkness stirs. She didn't understand. Was this dust light? Was something dark chasing it? Her pulse quickened as she looked toward the back door again. A gust of wind pushed against it from the outside, making it tremble slightly on its hinges. Myra's instinct screamed for her to run the other way, to go home, to hide under her blanket until everything made sense again. But another part of her, a smaller, quieter part, felt drawn to the unknown. For the first time in her life, something needed her. She followed the shimmering trail through the hallway, each step echoing louder than the last. When she reached the back door, she gently pressed her hand against it. The metal felt cold, colder than it should have been on a warm day. She pushed it open. A gust of wind rushed past her, carrying the scent of pine trees and wet soil. The back alley behind the library was empty, except for the swirling trail of silver dust that continued toward the forest. Mira stepped outside, the sun warming her shoulders. The alley was silent, but the forest beyond seemed to whisper. The tall trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves fluttering like they were trying to communicate. At the edge of the forest, the silver trail grew thicker, brighter, almost like it wanted her to find something. She took a deep breath and walked forward. The further she went, the more the forest seemed to shift around her. Birds had stopped singing. The air felt heavier, thicker, carrying a faint hum she couldn't explain. The path narrowed, branches arching overhead like natural tunnels. And then, Mira saw it, a faint glow among the trees, as if a lantern was floating in the middle of the woods. But as she got closer, she realized it wasn't a lantern at all. It was a girl. She couldn't have been older than 13, with tangled silver hair and skin that shimmered faintly, like moonlight trapped in human form. Her eyes were closed, and she lay curled on the ground as if she had fallen from a great height. The silver dust trail ended beside her. Mira gasped softly, kneeling down. Was she hurt? Who was she? Why was she glowing? And then something happened, something Mira would never forget. The girl's eyes slowly opened. They weren't normal eyes. They glowed with soft white light, swirling like galaxies in miniature. When she looked at Mira, it felt as if the entire forest exhaled. The girl blinked, confused, frightened, and whispered one trembling word. Help! Mira froze. Every instinct inside her screamed that this moment mattered, that this was the beginning of something much bigger than she could imagine. Before she could respond, branches behind her snapped loudly. Heavy steps approached. Deep, low breathing echoed through the trees. Something was coming. Something big. Something wrong. The silver-haired girl grabbed Myra's wrist with surprising strength. Don't let the shadows find me, she whispered urgently. You're the only one who can protect the light. Myra's breath hitched. Her? Protect someone? She didn't even know how to speak loudly in class, let alone face whatever was growling behind them. But the girl's glowing eyes held a trust Mira had never felt from anyone in her life. And that trust awakened something inside her, a spark she didn't know she had. Mira tightened her grip on the mysterious book. She held the girl's hand firmly. And for the first time ever, she didn't feel invisible. She felt chosen. The forest behind Mira rumbled again, this time louder, heavier, like something dragging itself across the earth, searching. The glowing girl tightened her hold on Myra's wrist, her trembling fingers cold as winter water. Fear rose in Myra's throat, sharp and unfamiliar. She had read countless fantasy stories in the library, but nothing, not a single book, had prepared her for the sound of real danger breathing just a few steps away. "What's coming?" Mira whispered shakily. The girl's luminous eyes darted toward the darkness between the trees. "Shadows," she breathed. "Hunters of light. I escaped them, but they followed. They always follow." Before Mira could process that, the book in her hand trembled. It flipped open on its own, pages fluttering wildly even though there was no wind around them. The glowing ink reshaped itself into new words as Mira watched in disbelief. "Where fear walks, courage is born. Where darkness hunts, light chooses its guardian." Guardian? Was the book talking about her? Another branch cracked sharply. The woods darkened as if a cloud had swallowed the sky. Mira could feel something massive approaching. Her heart hammered in her chest like it wanted to break free. "We have to hide," Mira whispered. The silver-haired girl nodded weakly, leaning heavily against her. Together, they stumbled deeper into the forest. Mira looked around desperately for somewhere safe, a hollow tree, a thick bush, anything, but the forest felt unfamiliar now, shifting and bending like it was alive. The leaves rustled with nervous whispers. Even the birds remained silent. And then, there it was. A cave. Small, partly hidden behind a curtain of ivy, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Mira didn't hesitate. She pushed the vines aside and helped the glowing girl inside. The cave was narrow, barely wide enough for two people, but its shadows felt safer than the monstrous steps outside. "Stay quiet," Mira whispered, though her own voice trembled. The girl curled against the rock wall, her glow dimming as if she were fading. Mira crouched beside her, listening. The forest outside went silent for a long moment, too silent, like the world was holding its breath again. Then, a long, low snarl rattled the trees. Mira clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Something huge moved past the cave entrance. Its footsteps were uneven but heavy. Mira could hear the drag of its limbs, the scrape of claws against soil. A smoky darkness seeped along the ground, sliding like oil, tendrils moving as if searching for warmth, for light. The silver-haired girl squeezed herself tighter against Mira, her glow shrinking to a faint pulse. The darkness outside paused. Mira froze completely, afraid even her heartbeat might give them away. Seconds stretched like hours. Then, the creature let out a frustrated growl, shaking the leaves overhead. The shadows slowly drifted away, melting back into the deeper forest as if retreating. Mira exhaled shakily. She waited another minute before whispering, "They're gone." "I think." The glowing girl looked up at her with exhausted, grateful eyes. "Thank you. If you hadn't found me, I don't know what would have happened." Mira swallowed. "Who are you?" The girl hesitated, as if unsure what she was allowed to share. Finally, she whispered, "My name is Lyra." Lyra. The name sparkled in Myra's mind like a constellation. "Where are you from?" Mira asked gently. Lyra glanced toward the sky through the cave opening. "Far from here. A place where light is born. A place humans can't see unless they're chosen." Chosen. That word again. "Why me?" Mira asked, her voice barely audible. I'm not special." Lyra shook her head slowly. "But you are. The shadows fear those who see the things others ignore. You see quietly. You notice everything. Only hearts like yours can protect what the darkness wants." Mira felt her breath catch in her throat. All her life she had been overlooked, unseen, treated like a shadow. And now, suddenly, the thing that made her invisible was the very thing that gave her strength? Lyra placed a small glowing hand over Myra's. "You're not invisible, Mira. You were just waiting for the right moment to be seen." The words hit her harder than any danger outside could. Tears stung her eyes. For the first time in her life, someone saw her, truly saw her. But the moment didn't last long. A deep rumble rose again from the woods, louder, angrier. Lyra's glow flickered desperately. "They're coming back," she whispered. Mira stiffened. "But how?" "They." Lyra looked terrified. "They can smell me. Light calls to them. And I'm too weak to hide it." Mira grabbed the mysterious book, clutching it to her chest. "What do we do?" The pages lit up instantly, responding to her touch with a sharp burst of silver light. The book flipped to a new page. Light protects light. Speak the word, and the veil shall answer. What word? Mira whispered urgently. Lyra leaned closer, pointing weakly to the bottom of the page. A single shimmering word appeared there, forming letter by letter like morning frost. Astra. The shadows outside growled again, louder. Mira didn't think, she acted. She held the book out, voice shaking but strong enough to carry through the cave. Astra. The moment the word left her mouth, the book exploded with a blinding wave of silver light. It wrapped around Mira and Lyra like a shield, expanding outward until it filled the entire cave. Outside, the shadow creature roared in pain. Light filled the forest. Darkness recoiled. Everything trembled. And for the first time in her life, Mira wasn't the quiet girl hiding from the world. She was its only hope. The blinding light faded slowly, like a powerful wave pulling back into calm water. Mira blinked rapidly, trying to steady her breathing as the silver glow settled around the edges of the cave. For a moment, everything was still, so still that she wondered if time itself had paused. The air felt warm now, not cold and heavy like before. The shadow's roar had vanished into a distant, angry echo that no longer shook the trees. Lyra exhaled shakily, her small body slumping with relief. You used it, she whispered. You called the veil. The veil? Mira repeated, still trembling. It's an ancient shield, Lyra said softly, her luminous fingers brushing the glowing wall that now surrounded them. Only those chosen by the Lightkeeper can summon it. Lightkeeper. The word felt important. Heavy. Beautiful, but Mira didn't understand. I don't know what any of this means, she admitted, her voice cracking from the surge of fear and power still pounding through her. I just said the word. Lyra shook her head with a faint, proud smile. No, that's not all. Calling the veil takes courage. And trust. The book responded because you responded. It chose you because your heart is quiet but never empty. Mira looked down at the book in her hands. Its cover still glowed faintly, warm like a heartbeat she was now connected to. But why me? She murmured. I'm nobody. Lyra's expression softened. Darkness doesn't hunt nobodies. It hunts threats. Mira felt a cold shiver run through her. Threat? Her? Before she could respond, the forest outside erupted with sound, branches thrashing, earth cracking, furious snarls splitting the silence. The shadow creature had returned, louder and more enraged, slamming against the invisible barrier of the veil. The cave walls vibrated with each impact. Lyra flinched. It won't hold forever, she whispered. Myra's heartbeat quickened again. What does it want? Why won't it stop? Lyra hesitated, fear clouding her glowing eyes. Because of what I carry. She placed a hand over her chest. Mira noticed, for the first time, a small orb-like glimmer beneath Lyra's collarbone. It pulsed like a tiny star trapped under her skin. What is that? Mira asked in awe. Lyra looked down, guilt and terror mixing on her face. The Solaris Seed, she whispered. A fragment of the light realm. It keeps our world alive. If darkness steals it, everything falls. Myra's breath caught. So they're chasing you because I stole it, Lyra finished, voice trembling. To keep it safe. The revelation hit Mira like a wave. A child no older than her, risking her entire existence to protect something that could save another world. Mira felt a deep ache of admiration and fear. But where were you going? Mira asked. Lyra looked directly into her eyes. To you. Me? Mira choked out. I didn't even know about any of this an hour ago. The book found you long before today, Lyra said gently. It watched, waited, whispered to you through your loneliness. People didn't see you, but the light did. Mira stared at the glowing girl, overwhelmed. Her entire life, she had waited for someone to notice her. She never imagined it would be something from another realm. Outside, the shadow creature snarled again, throwing itself against the veil with violent force. Cracks of darkness rippled across the barrier like black lightning. Lyra's glow flickered. It's getting stronger. We need to move before the veil breaks. But where? Mira asked, panic rising. Lyra pointed deeper inside the cave. There's a passage. It leads under the forest and back toward the cliffs. If we reach higher ground, the shadows become weaker. They hate the open sky. Mira took a deep, steadying breath. Fear still clawed at her, but something stronger rose alongside it: responsibility, purpose, and the new light stirring deep in her chest. Okay, she said. Let's go. Lyra tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. Mira quickly supported her, wrapping an arm around her small shoulders. Lyra leaned into her gratefully. Together, they moved toward the back of the cave. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but with each step Mira took, the book glowed brighter, lighting their path with soft silver light. The air grew cooler. The walls pulsed faintly, as if responding to the book's magic. Behind them, they heard a cracking sound, sharp, violent. Mira froze. Lyra turned pale. The veil had been struck again. Hard. A deep, echoing snarl thundered through the cave mouth. Then, a crack. A hiss. A shattering noise like breaking glass. The veil was breaking. Mira, Lyra whispered fearfully, hurry. They rushed deeper into the tunnel, stumbling, scraping against rocks, trying not to collapse from exhaustion and fear. The book glowed brighter, guiding them forward like a fragile beacon. Behind them, the sound of darkness seeping in grew louder, shifting, crawling, slithering. The tunnel widened suddenly. A fresh gust of cold wind swept in, and before them opened a vast cavern, glittering with ancient crystals hanging from the ceiling like frozen stars. The air shimmered with pale blue light reflecting off the walls. But Mira barely had time to marvel, because at the center of the cavern stood something impossible. A stone pedestal. A glowing symbol. The same symbol that marked the cover of the mysterious book. Myra's breath caught. Lyra gasped softly. The gate, it's real. Before Mira could ask what she meant, the ground behind them trembled. The shadow creature had entered the tunnel. Its growl shook the cavern. Mira turned slowly, heart hammering. Through the darkness of the passage, she saw two burning red eyes open. Then a massive, twisted shape began crawling toward them, formed of smoke and claws and hunger. Lyra squeezed Myra's hand desperately. Mira, she whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Mira breathed. Lyra looked at her with tears in her glowing eyes. For choosing you. And the shadow lunged. The shadow creature exploded out of the tunnel with a shriek that shook the entire cavern. It was larger than Mira had feared, twice her height, with limbs made of twisting smoke and claws that dripped black mist onto the glowing crystal floor. Its body had no solid shape, shifting constantly like a monstrous storm wrapped in skin made of night. But its eyes burned red like embers that had forgotten how to die. Lyra stumbled backward, pulling Mira with her. Run, she cried. But Mira stood frozen, the book pressed against her chest, fear locking her feet to the ground. The creature leaned forward, sniffing the air, and when its eyes landed on Lyra's glowing chest, it let out a snarl that split the cavern into echoing shards. It didn't want Mira. It didn't want the book. It wanted Lyra and the Solaris seed inside her. Why did you say you were sorry? Mira whispered breathlessly. Lyra looked at her with trembling, devastated eyes. Because you shouldn't have been dragged into this. You deserve to live in a world that sees you, not one that hunts you. The creature lunged. Everything happened at once. Lyra shoved Mira aside. The creature struck the ground where Mira had stood a moment ago. Crystals shattered, spraying shards of glowing blue across the cavern. Mira hit the floor hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. The book slipped from her hands and skidded across the smooth stone. Lyra tried to run toward her, but the creature's smoky tendrils wrapped around her ankle and yanked her violently backward. No! Mira screamed, scrambling to her knees. Lyra cried out in pain as the shadow dragged her across the floor. She reached out, glowing fingers trembling, her tear-filled eyes locking with Myra's. Mira, please. The shadow creature hissed and raised one massive claw to strike. Something inside Mira snapped. Fear cracked open, and something fierce burned through. She lunged toward the book, fingers outstretched. The moment her hand touched it, the cavern blazed with silver light. The pages flipped wildly, faster than the wind, faster than thought, until they stopped on a glowing page covered in swirling runes that Mira had never seen before. But she didn't need to read them. Her heart already understood. The book rose from her hands, floating in the air between her and the creature. Light poured from its pages like a waterfall of stars. Lyra gasped as the glow washed over her, weakening the shadow creature's grip. Mira stood slowly, her hair whipping around her face in the shining wind, her fear dissolving into something deeper, something ancient, something meant. The runes on the page rearranged themselves into a single sentence. When darkness strikes at the unprotected, the guardian rises. Mira didn't think. She didn't question. She simply stepped forward and shouted the first word that burned into her mind. Luminera. The cavern erupted. A beam of pure silver shot from the book, striking the creature directly in the chest. It screamed a raw, monstrous cry that trembled with rage and agony. The smoky darkness around it rippled violently, peeling away like burning cloth. Lyra collapsed to the ground, freed from its grip. Mira stumbled backward as the light grew brighter and brighter, spreading across the cavern like dawn breaking through a storm. The creature staggered, writhing, clawing at the light. Its form cracked, splintering into fragments of shadow that dissolved into nothingness. A final scream ripped through the cavern, and then it was gone. Only drifting sparks of fading darkness remained. Silence washed over the cavern like a wave. Mira breathed hard, chest rising and falling in sharp, trembling gasps. Her legs felt weak, her arms heavy, but the book lowered gently back into her hands, warm and steady, as if it were saying, "You did it." Lyra pushed herself up slowly, still shaking, her glow faint but steady. She limped toward Mira, eyes wide with awe. "Mira," she whispered, You used ancient light magic. Strong magic. Magic that even some lightkeepers can't summon without training." Mira blinked, still dazed. "I didn't even know what I was doing." "That's what makes it even more astonishing," Lyra said softly. Mira looked down at the book, its symbol glowing like a heartbeat. "What am I?" Lyra took her hand gently. "You are the guardian the light has been waiting for." Myra's breath caught. She shook her head slowly. "No, I'm just a quiet girl who no one notices." "Not anymore," Lyra whispered. "You shattered a shadow beast. You protected the Solaris seed. You saved me." Mira felt her eyes sting with overwhelmed tears. For the first time in her life, someone believed she was more than invisible. But the moment of peace didn't last long. The cavern trembled again, though not from the shadow creature this time. Cracks spread across the crystal walls, glowing brighter and brighter. Lyra's face went pale. "The gate is waking. That light magic, it triggered something ancient." "What does that mean?" Mira asked, voice shaky. Lyra pointed to the stone pedestal in the center of the cavern. The symbol engraved on it pulsed with blinding golden light. "It means," Lyra whispered, "that everything is about to change." The floor beneath them shook violently. The pedestal split open, and something powerful began rising from the light.